Welcome back to the foundry. Well, it's time for a new set of tires on the Rammer. Now, I've been running Goodyear Wrangler Duratracs on this truck for 2 or 3 years, and I really like them. But when I was tire shopping, I found something interesting. So let me show you what I went with and tell you why I selected them. First, I'll show you what I'm dealing with here. These are my Duratracs, and they're clearly not worn out. They have a significant amount of tread left on them. However, they have aged out. You can see a crack all the way around the cap of this tire. We're getting some sidewall bulge and cracking, as well as cracks in the tread pattern. And up here, this one's about 20 pounds low. I have to put air in this tire about every 2 weeks. So it's just time for a new set. The Wrangler Duratrac was introduced in 2009, and even today it's among Goodyear's best-selling light truck and SUV tires. Now, these were made in 2012. To give you an idea of how old they are, I bought them secondhand. I've only been running them about 2 or 3 years. But one key indicator of how old this tire is, you can tell by looking at the lugs on the sidewall. These are really tall lugs. They're long. They're longer than the later generations of Duratrac tires. Now, I personally like the longer side lugs on the sidewall. I think it gives it a good visual appeal, and I read that is one of the top selling factors on new tires today are the visual appeal of the sidewall lugs. I really don't know why they decided to make these smaller on the newer tires, other than maybe a cost-saving measure. Of course, less rubber costs less money. Could have been a balancing issue. Maybe these were harder to balance, but my truck, these tires have balanced very well. You can see there's no weights on the outside except for on one tire. Today's Duratracs are not an exact match to this, but they are very, very close. They're now called Duratrac RTs. RT stands for, I believe, rough terrain or rugged terrain or something of that nature. The key differences on the new ones, on the RTs, they went to a 3-ply sidewall. These are a 2-ply sidewall. They also added more siping on the RTs. These little squiggly lines are what's called siping. This is to aid with traction on ice. It also displaces water on the road. And with the RTs, they decided to remove the pre-drilled stud holes that these older ones have. So if you're a Yankee man, that might be of concern to you. But that's not something Southern man need concern himself with. Now, there's 2 other things they changed on the RTs. The pitch of the tread is slightly different, and the new RTs are manufactured in Chile, whereas these are made in the USA. Now that all that's out of the way with, let me show you what I decided to go with. These are not Duratracs. They are Kanati Trail Hog AT4s. Now, at first glance, they appear to be almost exactly like the Duratracs, but they are not. There are some key differences that we'll go over, and then I'll tell you why I selected this tire. So first of all, on the tread, these tread blocks are not braced or tapered in the same manner that they are on the Duratrac. So what that means is at high speeds, these may feel a little bit more wandery than the Duratrac. Next, I noticed while it does have siping, very similar to the Duratrac, the depth of the siping is not quite the same. The siping on these tires is much more shallow, which means the siping will essentially wear off eventually before I get to the wear bar. There's also a slight deviation in the pitch sequence of the lugs in comparison to the Duratrac. And on the Kanatis, the tread spacing is quite a bit more than the new Duratracs, but it's pretty close to the old ones. However, on the side, you've got significant more tread spacing than the Duratracs. And speaking of side, the sidewall tread is not as aggressive as the old style Duratracs. This is more in line with the RTs. And finally, you'll notice that the actual tire base itself in between the treads is smooth, whereas on the Duratrac, you've got little teeth in here. And the reason the Goodyear engineers thought it good to put these little teeth in here is it does 2 things. One, in real powdery snow conditions, it tends to retain snow between the lugs, and I think that's supposed to give you better traction on ice patches. Then when you get in the mud, these little teeth allow for the mud to be tossed out from between the treads. This tire doesn't have that. So I think it's pretty obvious that the Goodyear is the more engineered, higher quality tire. So why then did I decide to go with the cheaper Kanati? Was it just an abundance of frugality? No, that wasn't it, at least not in total. You see, the issue I have is I have multiple trucks and there's only one me to drive them. So what that means is oftentimes my mileage is so spread out among multiple vehicles that any one truck rarely sees more than a couple thousand miles on it a year. And what that translates to is the fact that I never get my money's worth out of a tire, because before I can, they always dry rot. So given no more miles than these tires are going to see, just a basic cost benefit calculation tells me I'm probably better off going with the cheaper tire, even if it is slightly less quality. Now, I do have expectations for these tires. Some of it good, some of it not so good, in comparison to the Duratracs that I've been running. Well, first off, this sidewall is a 3-ply sidewall. Those are 2-ply. Also, they have the tread pattern that I have grown to like. This is what's known as a hybrid between an all-terrain and a mud terrain. It covers that middle ground very well. It's somewhat quiet on the road due to this tighter center pattern, yet it still bites really good in the mud and in off-road conditions. However, my not so good expectation is that this tire is going to be slightly louder due to the wider tread spacing, and it may not handle as well on the highway due to the fact that the center tread is not braced as adequately as those are. So what do you guys think about the difference between the Kanatis and the Duratracs? And what are the factors you consider when you go to buy new tires? Drop it in the comments for me. So I'm about to go get these mounted up. While I'm doing that, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button if you like this video. And when I come back, we'll see what they look like and how they handle. Boom, installed. So on the way back over here from the tire shop, I noticed something that really surprised me about these new tires. They're more stable around, you know, this is city driving so far, and I wouldn't have expected that with these taller lugs, but it felt really good. As you can see, it handles road apples very well. These are strategically placed around the yard by my Labrador, so that's good to know. I think these ended up actually being a little bit taller, even though they're the same size. I think one reason is the Duratracs were flatter across the top. These are a little bit more rounded, and the sidewalls don't bulge quite as much as the Duratrac. Some of that is because the Duratrac had a thick ring of rubber around here that serves kind of as a rim guard. This one doesn't have that, but other than that, so far I like the way they look. Like I said, it handles real well around town. So let's take this thing out on the road and see how it does. So I've driven this thing around a little bit. I'm up to speed right now. I'm doing about 65. That speedometer is a little off with this tire size. But the ride quality is actually really good in comparison to what I had. However, it does wander around a little bit more. I wouldn't say wander around. It's not hunting around like the alignment's off. It's floating more. And that's kind of what I was expecting, given how tall the lugs are and how far apart they're spaced and so forth. But I can definitely feel it kind of floats, you know. And that'll probably get a little bit better as the tires get a little wear on them. And as for tire noise, they're a little bit more noisy, but it's not that whine that you get from an MT. It's more of a wind noise, and I have read that that's due to those wide spaced side lugs. They bring in a lot of air into the tread, and it gives it a little bit more wind noise, but it's actually not excessive. So while they seem more stable around town, they definitely float more on the highway. But I gotta say, I really do enjoy the ride quality. That's the only thing that I wasn't really expecting. I didn't think that the ride quality would be any better. I did expect a little bit of floating and a little bit more noise, but all in all, I mean, they're almost just exactly what I expected. Now, in terms of longevity, only time will tell. When I get more experience with these tires, get a little more wear on them, I'll do a review, like a proper review on them. But in the meantime, check out these 2 reviews I did. I did one for the Goodyear Wrangler Duratrac and one for the Goodyear Wrangler Authority.